So we'll go to you, Claire, then. So having had what Howard has spoken about, the challenges they face, do you resonate with some of these? Are you facing some of these challenges yourself in Andrew's farm?
Yeah, I think that you're completely right. We don't see climate change to the extremes that they're seeing in other countries, but I think climate change does really affect us. I have certain areas of land on the farm that is now flooded throughout the winter. I can't put any winter cropping in at all. This affects me for two reasons. One, it just limits rotation, but also we try and do quite a lot of work with cover crops to try and improve soil biology, try and make sure that there's cover for ground nesting birds. We work with our SPB, but these big areas are now not able to go into cover crops. They're now just left blank. There's a big philosophy in my farming that we are not really crop farmers, we're sunshine farmers, and if there's nothing growing in your soil to take the nutrients we get out of the sun, then you're wasting half a year. So we like to see growing roots in our soil at all points, not only just for soil structure, for microbiology, for everything. So the flooding does have an effect on us, not the same, obviously, effect as seen in other countries. I suppose other challenges are water. Again, we've been seeing drier and drier summers. We don't have any irrigation on our farm. We're a completely dry farm. So everything we do, we pray to God. All my family laugh because they're saying, what weather is it you want today? And I'm saying, I want rain today, but it needs to be dry 2 weeks because I've got some straw to cut. And I'm never happy, but it is just because we are completely open to the elements. And what's been happening in Scotland is the seasons are getting more extreme. In the winter, they're getting wetter. In the summer, they're getting drier. So it does make just us look at farming slightly differently and see how we can change it. So other challenges, I suppose staffing is a big challenge. So we try and only employ local people in our shop. So at the moment, we're employing about 27 local people in our area, which is quite a big employer for such a rural location. But trying to get staff at the moment is a challenge. I've currently got 3 job adverts out at the moment, and there's just not that many people in the area looking for work. So that is a constant struggle, just to keep really motivated team in and to keep them going. We also have other struggles. We're competing on a global market. Malting barley just now, I actually looked at a slip that my Dad got the year he was born for selling malting barley, and malting barley, I won't tell you the year I was born, several years ago, was sitting at £164 a tonne, and I phoned yesterday to get a price for malting barley, and it is £174 a tonne. So if you look at the price of labour, of diesel, of the cost of everything into that, the margins are just not there, which is a constant struggle. So that is a constant struggle. I suppose the new legislation coming in from government is putting a lot of pressure on. There's a big focus away from food production onto environmental elements on the farm. As a small-scale farmer, I think that's wrong. I think that every farmer has a huge opportunity to do better for their area, the environment, for their food production. And if every farmer grew food in a sustainable way, then that would be a far better philosophy than rewilding huge areas of land and bringing in food from abroad that we could be growing in this country. And I think there's a real balance there that we have to be careful not to miss. The carbon audits are a prime example of that. The government are very focused on carbon audits, but the mechanisms behind carbon audits do not work for farmers whatsoever. In our system, we do not plough any ground. If you plough ground, it releases carbon into the atmosphere. It also leaves soil away for soil erosion. You know, it's definitely not, in any sense of things, the right thing to do in our climate. But in a carbon audit situation, they don't take into account that ploughing releases carbon. That's forgotten about. So because we achieve slightly lower yields on our fields because we're direct drilling and we're looking after the soil, our carbon audits are actually higher, which is actually encouraging farmers to do probably the one thing you don't want them to do: intensify. So I think that before government legislates on these things, they need to get the mechanics behind them correct and work out what is actually important to everyone in this country. Farmers are pretty good. After the war, there was a lot of hunger, and the government asked the farmers to produce food and produce food cheap, and farmers responded. That's what they did. We produced food cheap. They've now changed and say, you know, we need to look after the environment more. And the farmers can do that. They've got a huge power and a huge ability to do that, but we just need to be pushed in the right directions. Tell us what you actually want us to do, and they can do it. The farmers will respond, and we could make a massive difference. But the legislation that farmers are getting is very confusing, and that does present another challenge of farming in Scotland.
Yeah, thank you so much. Claire, just sticking to you, you spoke about sustainable farming. Could you sort of highlight some of the sustainable practices you have at Andrews Farm?
Yes, so I suppose our livestock is a huge bit about that. We move the livestock around the farm constantly, trying to put organic manure back into the farm at all points to support our vegetable production, to support the arable production. Again, using cover crops, we want to have growing roots in the soil at all points. We need to make sure that we're taking as much out of the atmosphere as possibly we can and bringing it back down in the soil to nurture that soil. If we don't look after our soil, then we have nothing else. That is our main policy, is to look after our soil. So that could include things like we use a machine called a Claydon drill, which direct drills into stubbles, which means the stubble from, you'll see combines combining just now and they'll leave stubble in the field. We just direct drill straight into that. So that stubble's still got the root structure, it's still holding onto the soil, and we're putting the next crop into that, allowing it to grow. My dad always described it to me like it's like building a house. The worms in the ground build you a house every year, and every year you take a plough through it and knock down their house. Well, if you don't do that, instead of next year them rebuilding the house, they're actually putting an extension on and a swimming pool and all of this, all going on underneath the ground, which is what we try to do at Ardross. But I also think we need to be sustainable in our community, so that's why we've got a big focus on employing local people and also supporting local suppliers. We have suppliers all the time that come to us and say, I've got this really daft idea, I've got an orchard in my garden, I want to start making apple juice, no idea about it. So we sit and go through the kind of environmental health policies with them, what they'll need to do, how they get their labelling done, how they bring it to market. Because if we can support other people in our area, then the whole system works better. We also have a policy that we don't ask for discounts, or we don't ask suppliers if they can do it cheaply. We supplied vegetables to the supermarket for years, and we were the bottom of the chain. And if there was ever a discount at the top, that was us at the bottom. And we decided that we didn't want that. Anyone that supplies us, it needs to be sustainable right the way through the chain, because if one link falls out, then it doesn't work for anyone. So we make sure that the whole chain, that anyone that supplies us, is sustainable. Saying that, we try and support as many local farmers and local people as possible, but people were getting annoyed with me because they came to our shop for the really nice tonic and the really nice Scottish gin, and then had to go to the supermarket to buy their lemon for it. And they said, this is really not great, Claire. So we do then source products we cannot source locally from abroad, and we make sure they're fair trade as much as possible and try and bring in the same people that have the same kind of standards as us into our shop, which allows us to be a rural supermarket, the link between consumers and good food, hopefully.
Thank you so much. Howard, you also invest in sustainable farming in Malawi. So could you tell us a bit more about what you're doing in terms of community development, any other sustainable practices you have, and et cetera, et cetera?
Thank you once again. Our sustainable projects will be very different from what our colleagues do here in Scotland, because we are people who come from two different worlds. So doing sustainable projects will be also depend on, like in Africa, the poverty levels do much, they bring us behind on projects that we would like to do. But as an organization which is in partnership with our colleagues here, we are doing much to sustain our farming and our business. So if I was talking about the fair trade registration, is one way of sustaining our farming, because through that we are able to produce quality foods, which is liked by our off-takers, so we have a sustainable market. If you have a sustainable market, it means you also have to be sustainable producers. You don't have to disappoint your off-takers. But at the same time, we are doing more in investing in education, because in Africa, education is not for free. So what we have learned through fair trade is that without education, there's no sustainability of partnership. Without education, there's no sustainability of farming, because you will not be able to understand what your market requires. So in terms of education, because of this partnership, we are sending our children to secondary schools, and some are even going to universities. So what we are doing is to encourage our children to come back to our communities when they've gone to school, so that they help to sustain our business in the village. But also, it is difficult to keep a huge number of youth who are just roaming about in the village when you want to do sustainable agriculture. So what we are doing is we are bringing the youth together, teach them skills so that they are able to make their own money, so that they don't become troublemakers in the village, to be troubling farmers who want to progress. While at the same time, as an association, we have association field officers who work for Kaporo smallholder farmers, and we are doing climate smart agriculture, so that at least we are able to sustain our production. Because without new methods of agriculture, our production will go down and we will not be able to sustain our business. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Howard.